about 10 years. I studied in England, I studied education studies, and when I went back to Estonia, I felt that this is what I want to do. I would like there to be the possibility of home education. I hope that we can make it more widely accepted, and I'm happy to say that this has happened. So firstly, Estonia was independent before. First we gained our independence in 1918, and in 1920 home education became legal and was regulated by government. The main difference with today's home education in Estonia is actually that back then the person who stayed at home with the student had to be at least with the education of elementary school teacher, which is not the case today. But it was there, so when we regained our independence, I think Estonians felt that it's very important to get back all of what we lost. And I think that was part of the reason why it was so natural for us to have home education legal again, because during the Soviet years, of course, it wasn't. Everybody had to go to the state schools. And when I finished my studies, I found that actually some families were home educated in Estonia, but most people had not heard of it. So what I did, I contacted some of the main families who I knew about, and they led me to understand more about what's going on, because of course I didn't have children and I wasn't personally involved. So, firstly I looked at the document Koduõpetaja haiglate tingimused kord, which is basically a very small document, about 2 pages, that describes what is home education and how it's done in Estonia. So I'll just stop here for a minute. I'm sure all of you know where Estonia is, or maybe not. It's not that far away. It's less than 1,000 kilometers if you were a bird. And our country is bigger than Switzerland or Denmark, but there's only 1.3 million of us. So we have lots of space, if that's important in home education. And why I put the birth rate there is because we are losing our people. So Estonia is shrinking, and we are very special Estonians. There's not many of us. And about 14,000 babies are born each year. And the system is counting every one of them, and they're very wary of losing some for home education, for example. Because the state schools are funded, are given funding from the government per head, per child. So every child matters in Estonia. So by the law, we have 3 forms of home education. Elective home education is basically by parental wish. Then we have children with ill health, which is considered any medical reasons, and then hospitalized children, but this is only a very small part. So I don't have statistics for the last Unfortunately, I was not able to get the statistics for the last couple of years, because our Department of Education takes always the allowed 31 days to reply. So I didn't get the answer yet. But basically what you can see here is that there are much more home-educated children with ill health, and the number used to be quite high back in 2006. And then the Education Ministry decided to look into it, because when it reaches 1,000, they become interested in what's going on. And what they actually realized was that schools are pushing students out that are difficult to deal with in the classroom. So all the children with behavioral difficulties, all with some learning difficulties, were pushed to home education. It was interesting that parents contacted us who said that they don't want to home educate, but the teacher really insists that they have to. So, because they don't want them in their classrooms, these difficult children. So they changed the law so that you couldn't, the schools couldn't recommend home education for the reasons like behavioral or learning difficulties. And then the number dropped significantly for that, that section. So probably some of the children now are home educated by parental wish, but I've heard that it's still a problem, that the schools still try to make the parents then choose home education by parental wish. And the parents are actually in a really, really difficult situation then, and they contact us and say, what do we do? So we think in the Center of Home Education in Estonia that it's not food for a child to be home educated if the parents are not there and we don't want to really do it. So we try to find other solutions and have really open dialogue with the minister about it. The numbers for the children who are home educated for parental wish or elective home education, you cannot really trust these numbers at all. Because, well, you cannot really trust any of the numbers in Estonia, which makes any research really difficult. Because I've come across so many schools who don't actually mark the children who are home educated as they are home educated, but they keep it in the regular numbers so that they can get the money from the government. And even the parents who are home educating, they often don't know that the school actually didn't mark them correctly. And they find out later maybe. And I had a case with one school where I tried to research into something, and I knew that this school had many home educators, and I contacted the Minister of Education and asked them about why it's not in the statistics that this school has, like, I don't know, over 10 home educators. And I caused a little problem for the school because I wasn't aware that this is the practice, that this is what they do in order to get money. So, unfortunately, really can't do anything with those numbers in Estonia. So I don't know how to go about doing research in Estonia about home educators.
Yeah. Just
yes?
a question. Have you an idea then how many home educators you are not registered in Estonia today?
No.
But
there are some families who do not want to. There are some families who do not want to contact anybody, and who we probably don't even know about. But because of the school and the money problems, you can't trust any of that. And because of the schools trying to push behavioral kids back at home, they don't want to deal with them, then we don't really know in which category they actually appear or what's going on. So it's quite useless. So this is Friends of Home Education in Estonia. Estonia Ministry of Education and Research, and especially the person there that is like responsible for this area is Merike Mända, and she's been amazing, really. What I can say about Estonia is that the law and the attitude of the ministry is really pro-home education. think that people should have the choice, and we don't really have any problems with them. And the home educators in Estonia are very happy, well, quite happy with the law and how it regulates home education. Well, just to give a short overview, is that children have to go to school from 7 till 16, and if you want to home educate, you have to enroll your child in a school. And basically everything is determined by what kind of school you find and what kind of teacher you find, who will be, you need to find a good teacher who will want to cooperate with you. And then you have to apply for home education every year. And if the school finds that the progress is not what it's supposed to be, they can make you actually stop home educating. But I haven't heard of any cases like that. So twice a year, the parent must go with the child to the school. That's by the law. But most state schools want the child to come much more often. And it's only the Waldorf schools that we have actually very good working relationship with, but not with all Waldorf schools though. So my sister's family started a Waldorf school in my hometown, and because she home educated her children before, she decided that in that school they would welcome all home educators from all over Estonia, and she would be the one dealing with them, so that the class teacher wouldn't. But we call her home education coordinator, and she then has the, well, how would you say, like discussions twice a year with each family. And it works really well. She has, in the school there's only 3 grades right now because the school is young and it's building itself up, but there are 15 home educated students at the moment, up until 1st grade to the 6th grade. Because that's what they can teach right now. That's the paper that we got from the ministry, that they can teach at the 6th grade right now. And the families really like that, because then you don't have to teach every teacher what they need to do with you. But there is this one person who knows something about home education, and then you can have a good relationship. And then there's also, of course, the Center for Home Education. We try to be there for them as much as we can, organizing summer days, winter days, conferences. They contact us all the time with some questions if they don't want to ask the ministry directly, but we've always said that it's okay in Estonia to contact ministry, and they're happy to talk about home education, and it's really good in that way. But then there's also the physical side. We have challenges as well. And the Ministry of Finance does not understand why the schools need money to deal with home educators. So at the moment, the school doesn't get the full money that they would for any other child, but they get about 1/3 of the money for home educated child, and a little bit more for if it was for medical reasons, because when it's for medical reasons, then the school is responsible, and when it's for elective home education, then it's the parent who is responsible. And the Minister of Finance is arguing with the Minister of Education that they don't need this money, and we don't have to pay for somebody's private pleasures, basically. But the Minister of Education has kept it that good that the schools still get this money, and the school still has to provide materials for the families, like books, worksheets, things like that, even for the home educating families, which the finance department don't really like. And they tried to cancel it, and now it was cancelled for a couple of months, and then luckily it's back in the law that they have to provide the materials if the parents want it. The biggest problem in Estonia then is not the law, it's not the ministry, it's the teachers. It's the state school system. I think it has something to do with well, Soviet time, when teachers and doctors were the ones who were most important people, because they exercised the law, and really they were always the ones who were right, and you couldn't say anything about it. So I think teachers in today's system find it very, very hard to believe that the parent has any right, or the parent knows anything about their work, and how can you teach a child if you're not a teacher. So we are struggling with schools, and even the Minister of Education has said in media that it's a very difficult situation that that the law supports home education and the schools just don't care. The schools in most cases, they're not even aware of the law, so that the families have to show them, okay, that it's legal, we can do it, and actually you don't have to be afraid because the ministry is okay with that. And most teachers still are afraid, and they don't know what it is, and they don't really want to do anything with it. And then social pressures, of course, especially grandparents. They've just grown up at a different time, and I don't understand. I know my own relatives, they find it very difficult to understand. I'm sure that must be the case for many countries.
Do they report you to the children's welfare for
Sorry?
home educating? Do the schools report you to the children's welfare for home educating?
No. Because you can't home educate just like that. You have to enroll your child at a school. So in order to do that, the school must look up the law so that they know then that it's legal, and they don't really have any grounds to just say no. Private schools can say no, just because they don't want you. But state schools really can't say no. They have to have, well, basically they can only say no if they see that the child is not progressing at all. And the law states that it's that if the child is not progressing in a very, in a big way, basically. But it's what is, how do you measure that? So, let's see.
Tiia?
Yes, well,
Okay.
do they measure that? Do the schools test the kids if they're progressing, or how is?
Okay, the state schools want to test them. They would like to test them every day, every week, as often as they could, with exactly the same test that they have for school children. With Waldorf schools, they do it as the law states, twice a year. And then schools differ. Some actually make them do some tests, but like in our school there, we just talk to the parents basically and to the child. And we think that if there's not a trustful relationship, then there's no point of doing it. Yes. Just think. And I think it is. I think the state's attitude is so good, mainly for two reasons. Is because we want everything to be as it was during our first independence years. I mean, there is this thing, we want everything to be as it was back then because then it was so good. And then, if it was allowed, then it must be good. And then there is this other thing, I think, that involves young people, because we come from the Soviet time when you couldn't do anything. So Estonia tries to be as tolerant and as fair, so that everybody can practice their freedoms. I think that's it. That's why it's on the state level is like that. And it seems to me that the awareness is really growing. We've had so many articles in newspapers. We've had some families talking in the radio, and people really seem to know more about it now than they did about 19 years ago. So basically that's it.